Well, ready to start the session? Okay, so hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining this webinar. This webinar is in fact part of a series of very successful sessions that we organize around the Cloud Pak. So IBM Cloud Pak is really the focus for IBM within their hybrid cloud strategy. During this call, we will put all participants on mute. But of course, if you would have questions, please put them in the chat. Thomas, I have seen that you have already found the chat room. So please, if you have questions, put them in the chat. Dirk and myself will monitor the chat. And then we will handle your questions after this session, which will take for about, let's say, 35 to 40 minutes. Just for your information, this session is also being recorded. So if you want to have a replay, or if you want to share it with your colleagues afterwards, you will receive the recorded version after the webinar. For those who don't know me, I'm Manu de Witte. I'm IBM Account Manager at Tech Data. And in the name of Tech Data and IBM, I welcome you to this session. Now, more than a year ago, IBM decided to acquire Red Hat for more than $35 billion, which is in fact a huge and crucial investment for IBM. And together, IBM and Red Hat decided to accelerate innovation by offering a next generation multi-cloud hybrid platform existing out of 6 different cloud packs. Now, a cloud pack offers you the possibility to have a secure, open, and faster way to move core business applications to any cloud through enterprise-ready, containerized software solutions. And in today's session, we will give you a high-level overview, or Michelle will give you a high-level overview of the IBM Cloud Pak for Multicloud Management. Through this, you will have the possibility to have, let's say, a comprehensive or a consistent visibility, governance, and automation from on-premise to the edge. As such, enterprises will gain capabilities such as multi-cluster management, event management, application management, and infrastructure management. As already said in today's call, we have the honor to have Michelle van der Poorten presenting the multi-cloud the IBM Cloud Pak for Multicloud Management. So Michelle, stage is yours.
Thanks, Manu. Thanks for the warm introduction. So hi everybody, my name is Michelle van der Poorten. I know that some people in the call may already know me. My role at IBM is I'm in charge of the relationship with what we call technology service providers. So companies which are providing technologically based service to their end clients. So today, as Manu already indicated, we'll be covering a question which is popping up ever more with a number of my partners and their clients, is considering the complexity which is growing on handling multi-cloud and hybrid environments. How can you actually do this? So first of all, some statistics, if I can put it like that. So what we find, and this has been quite consistent over the past years, is that currently only 20% of enterprise workloads have moved to the cloud. But at the same time, we already see that 94% of our enterprise clients are using multiple clouds. Multiple clouds, not so much in that they are using at the same time AWS, Azure, Google, and IBM, but they are using AWS and Azure, and perhaps a Salesforce or some other specific SaaS offering. So they are already combining different cloud environments. At the same time, what we see, if you look here to the right-hand side of the slide, is that what we currently have is a very strong combination between the traditional IT, which is more and more running in private clouds, combined with those public clouds and SaaS offerings, combined with dedicated clouds which are set up specifically for the needs of that client. If you look at the kind of figures we are seeing here, these are gigantic, and we don't have any indication that these compound annual growth rate will slow down over the next years. I would rather say that considering the crisis we're in with Corona, these figures will only go up because, of course, we're working more and more remote, and having a cloud supporting that remote working will certainly help facilitate stuff. Now, having said that, there is an important move which is going on. And the first thing which has happened from the way we used to work is that it was lift and shift. And we took a virtual machine which was running on this side and just dropped it on the other side, or it was an application which was running here and we dropped it onto bare metal there, and we just did lift and shift. Now, of course, this helps in some part, but often this is not the full solution you want to have. What you want to do is perhaps, if you have an application running on this side, that you want to start using APIs which are running on the cloud, which can bring you additional capabilities which you do not want to run on premise. For instance, you have an AI application which is running here, which has to do inferencing, scoring, but you want to train your model on the cloud because you don't want to buy the infrastructure locally to be able just to have a training done during a few weeks over years' time. The other thing is, of course, that you see, and more so, that we're trying now to refactor existing applications into more and more cloud native applications running on Kubernetes and bring it into the full cloud architecture. Of course, as already indicated, more and more clients are using SaaS offerings such as a Salesforce to be able to run specific workloads. But what is important in all this is that if you see the data being spread, is what is the governance? Who can have access to that data? How are you going to set up the architecture in case some side fails? How are you going to operate correctly in that case? So as you can see underneath, there are quite a number of elements which come in if you want to be able to handle this kind of migration from your traditional way of working into the cloud architecture. Now, already mentioned, and Manu did as well, we are especially looking at containers and Kubernetes. Of course, there is VMware, and VMware will be there for quite a while. But I think that going forward, containers and Kubernetes are really the de facto standard to work with. Why? Because we see that it gives a number of important advantages. Developer productivity, resilience, efficiency, and more automation. If you look at the evolution, and you see it stops here in 2018, and probably when you would look at the figures now, the curve would be even steeper. Kubernetes clearly has won in the market. There was some let's say competition from Docker swarms and other ways of containerization. It's clear that Kubernetes now has won and is available anywhere, with important KPIs which can be met while using Kubernetes. Sorry, my cursor on the wrong page. Now, what is important if you look at Kubernetes versus what Manu was already mentioning, Red Hat, and their implementation of Kubernetes, which is called Openshift, is that actually, if you look at what you need to do with Kubernetes to bring it to an enterprise level, is actually bringing in logging, monitoring, security, and managing it all by yourself. With Red Hat Openshift, you're actually able to do what Kubernetes intends to do, but we give you complete separation, isolation from the underlying hardware, whether that's hardware running on AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, our cloud, or a private cloud, or on-premise. If you run Red Hat Enterprise Linux, with on top of it OpenShift, you can really be sure that whatever runs underneath is completely independent of your software, which you will be running on top of it. And that's something which I think is crucial going forward, because if you're using the Kubernetes stack of AWS or the one of Google Cloud or Azure or the of IBM for that matter, or something on a private cloud, you're actually using a Kubernetes which is adapted to the underlying OS, meaning that you cannot be fully sure that whatever you run on top of it will run wherever you want it to run. So de facto, you get into a kind of lock-in situation, because your Kubernetes will be linked to the one which is running AWS, or the one on Google, or on our cloud for that matter. So moving workloads from one cloud to another becomes far more difficult. With this kind of setup, this becomes completely feasible, and you get the possibility to say to your clients, wherever you want to run, we are able to work with you on that environment. Now, what we did is we really see Red Hat and OpenShift as it says here, the open hybrid multi-cloud platform, because we don't care what's underneath. We really don't care. And what we will be doing from IBM, and what Manu already mentioned is from IBM, we built on top of this OpenShift platform, we built what is called Cloud Paks. And some people may wonder, why is there a C missing? Because this stands for product packaged and adapted to Kubernetes. So there's no C because it isn't needed. This is an actually abbreviation. So Cloud Paks will meet different functionalities which are needed. And on top of that, you as partners or our end clients can start building applications which are then completely separated from the underlying hardware, underlying cloud provider, and can then start moving it around where it makes sense, even onto the edge, as already was mentioned by Manu. So what we did then is, once we had this platform, which was acquired, but important to say, Red Hat is now part of IBM as kind of a group, but it remains a completely separate entity. They have their own strategy. They are working with AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and they need to stay completely independent. Why? Because they rely completely on the open source community. They bring in enterprise elements, but they rely completely on the open source community, and there's no intention whatsoever to change that strategy. I would say rather on the contrary, we want to, as IBM, fully integrate more and more with the open source community, as well as we have been doing over the past 20 years. But back to this platform. So as said, OpenShift brings in, on top of what plain vanilla Kubernetes does, bring in logging, monitoring, security, identity access management, of course, in a managed way. With on top, what we bring is then our own software together with open source components. And of course, we make sure that everything is certified with the possibility, again, to be able to run anywhere. So is there any magic to what we're doing here? Not really. Actually, you could all do it yourself, but it would mean that you would have to fill in where this says yes on the right. It would mean that you would have to do something to make sure that you're able to meet a yes. And of course, that would not be full stack support by IBM, but you would need to do support by yourself. You would need to have to integrate a deployment. That's where we see the huge difference between if you're just using plain vanilla Kubernetes versus what we can bring with our Cloud Paks. Now, Manu already mentioned there are quite a number of them, and I'll just very briefly touch upon them. So one is Cloud Pak for applications, having to do with frameworks and runtimes, the G2E engines, WebSphere, but also Liberty. Tools, everything to do with the DevOps tool chain and automation on that part. Modernizing legacy Java applications into towards rather cloud native applications. Cloud Pak for data is all about how to handle data as much as the collection goes. Where does the data sit? How do I handle the governance, which I just briefly touched upon in one of the previous slides. And then, of course, the AI part, the analytics and AI part. Cloud Pak for integration, it's all about, as the word says, integrating the message queues, the API management, all that is handled in Cloud Pak for integration. Cloud Pak for automation is having to be robotics process automation linked with digital workers. Cloud Pak for multi-cloud management, of course, I will deep dive in this one, considering it's the subject of today. And then we also have one on the Cloud Pak for security, where you can find products which may be known by some people, which are called Resilience and QRadar, for instance. Again, deployable wherever there is actually Red Hat OpenShift stack available. So if you look on AWS, they have a managed OpenShift, well, you can just say, okay, I need a Cloud Pak for application, I will just deploy it over there. And of course, what you can do on those other clouds, you can also do it on our cloud. Important to say that if you deploy a Cloud Pak on our cloud, the OpenShift subscription comes with the license. So there's no additional cost for the subscription, which you would have on other clouds. All right, now let's deep dive into Cloud Pak for multi-cloud management. So multi-cloud management, and actually this name does not cover the full load because it's really about the hybrid environment. So it's really about being able to manage workloads wherever they run. Wherever they run, being it's on the IBM Cloud, but it can be on AWS, Azure, Google, or on-premise at your client or your own data center. So this is crucial because it gives you one single control plane to manage your applications wherever they run. At the same time, it helps in automating the tasks which are typically now scripted, but it takes the automation to the next level. It also helps in remediating events because you can pre-configure actions. So whenever an event occurs, that you're able to have automatically the intervention or the solution being deployed. And it helps your teams to manage quickly and respond quickly to scaling requirements. At the same time, and so that's quite some coverage, it helps in application modernization because it can view what is going on. It can make sure that your applications are able to scale. Of course, it needs to be ready for it. So it needs to be serverless in that sense, to scale from 0 to the right size, which is required, and help you optimize your applications to meet the performance which is required. And crucial crucial in this context is how do you maintain your governance and compliance across all those environments? Because it's easy enough, I put the easy enough between quotes, to manage it in a single environment. But how do you do this when your environment consists of workloads which are running on AWS, Google, and a part of it is also running on-prem? So what we're doing here is just some screenshots to explain what is happening. So you can see your view across different cloud providers. So in this case, as maybe it's a bit small for you to see, but the purple part is Amazon workload, and then there's other workloads running on different clouds. What are the different instances which are running? And important to note is, and I haven't mentioned that, but we can also manage VMware. So it's not just about containers. Multicloud, so Cloud Pak Multicloud Management also can manage VMware. And you see what is actually up and running. You can also see what is the chargeback. So it's not just about being able to measure what is going on. You can actually see as well what is the cost. And of course, if you know the cost, you can start making decisions on shouldn't I move my workload from this perhaps on-premise environment into into a cloud, or perhaps move it from one cloud to another because you see that the price is spiking and perhaps the metrics are better with another cloud provider for that specific application. So at the same time, what is important is for clients who might be also using other Cloud Paks is that Cloud Pak for Multicloud Management has a part which is called License Advisor. So it can help you view what is being used on other Cloud Paks, as the name says here, Cloud Pak for Application, Cloud Pak for Integration, what is being used, so that you can know that from a compliance perspective, you're indeed in the license and you do not expose yourself to any problems. On the messaging queue, it is multi-cloud management that will take into account what is being deployed and how to be able to manage those message queues in order to make sure that they work correctly and keep on working correctly. Next, and a very important part and becoming ever more important, clearly, is almost like in security operations, there's so much going on. It's become very, very hard to do everything manually. So being able to have more and more automation done, and of course, automation in the context of Red Hat is mainly driven by Ansible. Combining this with the environment which we give via Cloud Pak for Multicloud Management gives you an excellent environment to maintain and automate your operations wherever the workload is running. And the workload is not just the infrastructure part, it's also on the application part. As you can see here, there's different elements which can be deployed, can be run wherever it makes sense. Application modernization, I think, is becoming ever more important because as we saw in one of the previous slides, in the beginning it was lift and shift. But we quickly found out that lift and shift is not sufficient. So we need to start seeing, can we move from a monolithic application into a more containerized microservice-based application? If that's the case, well, then you can start playing around between quotes where I'm going to run my application. What makes most sense? And Multicloud Management will help you get that view on what is happening and help you choose where is the best deployment of my workload to meet the SLA I have with my business, with my client. And then something which I find crucial in this world is governance and compliance, because it's all nice that you're able to run your workloads everywhere. You still expect it, and especially for the people working in highly regulated environments, to be able to show that your environments, which may be running everywhere, still apply the policies which are required, meet the compliance regulations which are required, and it will be not accepted as an excuse that, okay, this was running somewhere I was not aware and I was not able to reach. This is, of course, an unacceptable situation. Important is as well that you can bring your own security tools, so it does not all need to be IBM. You can bring in other security tools, which then the logging can be handled via the interface so that you have a view over what is happening on your different environments. So if you bring all this together, you have a part which is linked to the DevOps, linked to the DevSec, and SecOps as such. If you bring these three elements into the IT ops transformation, what do you see? You see more and more AI ops being integrated, open and pluggable. Why? Because we know that we don't have probably everything in our own toolkit. So we need to be open, that you can bring in other tools, open source tooling or third party, to make sure that you can extend the environment. Automation, crucial. And then more into the application modernization is, okay, what needs to happen to optimize the application performance? How can I deploy and move my application across different clouds? Then in the CI/CD, how can I deploy and deliver my application across those hybrid environments, again, where it makes most sense for my business? Then from a security perspective, how can I make sure that my policies are deployed and enforced automatically? What is a single source of truth of where my data sits at the same time my compliance applies? And make sure that who can access the data is indeed the people who can access the data. And then from a visibility across the hybrid part, it is trying to reduce provisioning time. Make sure that you're able, with one push of the button, able to deploy your environment linked with the whole stack which is underneath. Give you possibility to do automated scaling, because we can steer the APIs which are offered by underlying cloud providers. Of course, for on-prem, this is harder because typically the infrastructure is limited in the capabilities, as I indicated in the slide on the move from left to right. One of the things, of course, where public cloud is being used for is to have just that scalability. So the automated scaling is, of course, more on the cloud side. And then the single control plane, that's, of course, what the basic tenet of this offering is all about. So just some examples of the third-party integration I was already referring to. So for instance, for the security intelligence, we're using Sysdig to extend our own offering. And we have Humio, which helps on debugging problems in the operations. And actually, we also find that on the other side in the Vault for the single source of truth for the security event and retentions. And then here in the other side, we have Turbonomic, which helps in doing, as is described here, automated pod rescheduling to make sure that the noisy neighbors, because if this is a shared environment, it could well be that there's a rogue application which is taking up far too many resources, that you can see how you can reschedule those applications and make sure that that noisy neighbor gets separated from the rest of the environment and hence reduce its impact. So if you look at it from a high level, what you see is we have a part on application lifecycle management. We have a part on the protection and compliance, container environment management, and as I said, also the VMware environment management. All that is based on Ansible and Terraform. And then from day 2 operations, we have SRE tooling, of course, linked to application infrastructure monitoring, linked to the event management remediation, because otherwise you will not be able to do the operations clearly. And then, as I said, chargeback and license management to be able to know how I'm doing on my license side and how can I charge back towards my clients, both externally and internally. And of course, the partner integration, which I just shown on the previous slide. As far as where can it run, again, I'm going to keep underlining that, but I think it's crucial. So it's both on the container environments, which can be Red Hat OpenShift, but also others, and can be plain vanilla Kubernetes. There's no need to have an OpenShift to be able to manage it. It can be plain vanilla Kubernetes, or on the other side, an OpenStack, or VMware and other public cloud traditional workloads. And that's it for this presentation. So I think I managed it just in time to be able to answer some questions if they would have come in the meantime. So Mani, back to you.
Thank you, Michel. Just having a look at the chat, and at this point of time, no questions mentioned. Okay. On the other hand, perhaps a question or a statement from my side. The IBM Cloud Pak for Multicloud Management gives great possibilities in things like visibility, automation, everything about governance. And we always talk about multi-cloud and multi-cloud hybrid environments. But just wondering, it could be of use for a customer who has only one cloud vendor as well, because it gives you all the possibilities of automation, visibility, governance. And right. I think in our Belgium, Luxembourg market, I think we have quite some customers with only one cloud vendor.
That could well be the case, Manu, and in that sense, it does make, well, I think what they will typically have, if they have just one cloud vendor, they will certainly still have on-premise environments as well. So already from that point of view, it makes a lot of sense. And what we typically will see there is that perhaps, that's not even sure, but perhaps on the cloud part, they will have containers, but on the on-premise part, well, they will certainly have is a VMware environment. So already there, you can see the value which this Cloud Pak can bring, because you can actually have that single control plane to manage those different environments, even though they're completely different technologies running in completely different places.
Yeah, okay. Michel, what about competition?
So to my knowledge, there's at this moment nobody who's offering a complete solution as we have at this moment. If you look at Red Hat, they do have a part, and of course it's based on what they have with Ansible, and actually a part from our software which has been open sourced and now has been integrated into OpenShift on multi-cluster management, my apologies. So that's one thing. What we see happening though is that on Microsoft side, they are of course also looking at the hybrid aspect, but similarly to what we see with AWS is that their management tools seem to be oriented towards their own environment. So we don't see the same kind of openness at this moment, and maybe of course this will come in the future, but we don't see the same kind of openness to be able to manage and control workloads wherever they run.
Okay, thank you. I've just seen that Dirk has opened the possibility for everybody to ask questions, though.
Indeed.
So please go ahead if you have questions.
Maybe I can ask a question then, perhaps somebody will react. Who has has been confronted to this kind of situation in a client situation? Without naming the client probably, but just to understand whether this rings a bell with somebody.
We have one client, but we are already implementing the MCM there as of now.
I'm very happy to hear that. And who was speaking, if I can ask a question?
Glenn from Flow Factor.
Okay, hi Glenn. Yeah, good. Any other insights you would like to share with somebody else?
Michel, Glenn mentions they are working on a project. What's your feeling on the, let's say, the potential? Because it's quite new, this Cloud Pak. What are your insights on potential on?
So what I find very interesting with, and I should have mentioned that, my apologies for that. The Cloud Pak for Multicloud Management works based, or is priced rather, based on the number of instances which are being managed, which is a very interesting metric. And I can tell you that pricing wise, it is a very appealing offering. So that's something to take into account, because it does mean that you get this full stack actually links to the what we call MVSs, and managed virtual service, and it can start at a really very low cost, because and then it can just grow with the number of instances you need to manage. So for people who are in the managed service provider business, I think this can be very appealing, because for me it means two things. On the one side, you're able to manage your current workloads wherever they run, but importantly, and I think that currently that's not being done that much, is extend your management platform into the on-prem environment of your client and start managing that as well for them. I think that could be a very interesting or appealing offering, because at that point, you do a kind of infrastructure outsourcing without the outsourcing. I think that could be, for the managed service providers in this call, a very appealing offering.
I might have a question related to that. As you say, then the license cost for monitoring something like an on-prem, is it then like, let's say we have a VM instance, and per VM instance you're monitoring, you have the license cost, or is it counted in another way?
And there, I don't know the exact metric anymore. I think one MVS relates to X VMs. Manu, do you have that metric in front of you?
Not by the head, no, but I can. We can provide it, of course.
Okay. Yeah, please. So it's not one-on-one for sure. Especially not so on the container side. There I know one MVS is one worker node. But on the VMware side, there is a metric, and the metric is not, it's 1 to 4, it's much higher. It's I think it's 1 to 20 or something, or even higher. But we'll get back to you on that.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
Well, Michel, not in the chat. So if there are still questions, you can put yourself on unmute. So go ahead.
Seems clear to me.
Okay. Excellent.
That's good. That's good. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
With pleasure.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so as said, this session is being recorded. So if you want to have the replay or as said, send it to your colleagues, please don't hesitate. Herewith, Michel, I would like to thank you for your clear presentation on the possibilities of the IBM Cloud Pak for multi-cloud management. And I would say have a nice afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. And the pleasure was all mine. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.